Boston College is looking in the transfer portal for some defensive line help. Maybe they're going to find some names that could really redefine this group.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. Check out all my written work over there. I've been covering this team for over 10 years. I'm a Boston College graduate, and I'm going to give you all the inside information that you want to know about Boston College sports. On today's show, it's all portal news. Well, mostly portal news. I want to talk about lacrosse. I had a few of you guys asking me about it. They had an amazing game on Thursday night. I'm going to explain what happened. We're also going to look at Bill O'Brien's comments on his latest podcast about the transfer portal. He kind of solidified his thoughts about how he views BC in the portal. And then I got a few names I think you should probably watch for in terms of potential targets for BC. So let's kick that off. On yesterday's show, I talked about Jason Hewlett, a linebacker from Michigan who has already set up an official visit to check out Boston College next week. He is a former four-star recruit, obviously plays for Michigan. I love that. And now he's going to look at BC and he's going to look at West Virginia. But what other positions could they look at? You know, there's some folks out there that are saying other positions. I really think it's a small group. I think there's three positions BC is going to look at. And honestly, I think it's more depth than it is you need a starter here. It's linebacker and it's defensive line, both edge and defensive tackle. I think they're going to probably look at all of that and then bring in guys that can compete for that starting job, but will be depth if they don't, or guys that will end up being depth, on your roster. So the defensive line. Today, I want to really look at a pair of defensive tackles. And right now, if you look at BC's defensive tackle position, it is very senior heavy. You have a lot of players with only minimal, like 1 year. I think that most of them are 1 year of eligibility left. Ty Clemens, Owen Stodmeyer, George Rooks, Quan Williams, Chuck Nato, all just 1 year of eligibility remaining. So when next year flips, your defensive tackle position is kaput. And it's worrisome because you brought in Sterling Sanders. That's great. And I think you're going to have a couple from this upcoming class, but they're going to be true freshmen. So you're going from 1 year where you're super senior heavy to the next year where you are basically got a bunch of youngins out there in the trenches. And that is not a good sign, especially at defensive tackle. That's one that you want to condition your guys to get ready for the college game. And, playing a true freshman out there is probably not the best. So when you're looking in the portal, you want to fill that gap. You have a gap on your roster right now. You have the olds and the youngs. You don't have anything in between. And that in between, I think, is what you look for in the portal. You look for transfers that have 2 or 3 years left of eligibility, because then you can fill that. They become de facto starters next year because you don't have to, you have somebody who's been in the college ranks for 3 years at this point, this year and then maybe last year or this year or 2 years before. I had two names that popped up, and I think they're players that BC may check out, but I want to say the players that I believe BC has at least looked at this session, a lot of them are from Power 4, and I'm interested to see who they land, because you have Michigan, and then we have two that I've been kind of eyeing, and this is redshirt freshman Josh Horton out of the University of Miami. He's a former 4-star from Fairburn, Georgia. So one connection I see right there. Tim Lewis seems to know everybody in Georgia, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So wonder if he knows who this kid is. That's my first wonder there. And that's why I see the connection. He played a bit as a freshman. He had 4 total tackles. I think he played in 3 games, all of them absolute blowouts against the Gators, Ball State, and Wake Forest. So he just didn't have a big role. Will he go from a school like Miami to BC, or is he going to go chase an NIL package? That'll be the next question. I could see BC using a guy like this. He is huge. He is 6'4", 300 pounds. I don't think BC has. I mean, George Rooks. George Rooks is 6'5". Sorry, so 6'5" is your biggest defensive tackle. I love to get some big size out there. You get your bowling balls at the middle sometimes, but you also go for some big guys too. This would be a nice one. And he's a 4-star. He had a ton of interest coming out of high school. Ended up with the Hurricanes. I don't know why things did not work out with the Hurricanes, but that would be an interesting one to watch for. And the second one I want to watch for is William Spencer, another massive defensive tackle. He's even bigger at 6'5", 300 pounds. He is also a redshirt freshman, and he played at Louisville last year. Also a former 4-star. So you see, this is something interesting here. Your fall transfer portal were all FCS kids that I actually had to go on 247 when I'm writing these stories and create profiles for them because many of them didn't exist. To go from that to Jason Hewlett, 4-star, potentially these guys as 4-stars. These guys don't have visits yet. I'm just wondering if they might fit what BC is looking for. So Spencer, 1 tackle. Again though, you have 4 years of eligibility here, and he's already been there for 1 year. He slides into that spot that you're missing right there, which is that defensive tackle that's played a little bit. He's not a senior. He's not a youngin. He's right there in the middle. So those are 2 that I saw that would be interesting. Of course, there could be other updates too. I thought it was really funny that BC did land a new player, and it's a preferred walk-on. And this is from a team I have never heard of before, which is UW Plainville, I think it is. UW Plainville, and his name is Will Straka. And he's Platteville, sorry. UW Platteville, so that's Wisconsin. He is a team captain. He was a 5th All-8 WICAC linebacker. He had 70 tackles. I showed his film to Mitch Wolf, and he said, man, he's fast. So he's going from Division III to BC. So to me, he's a preferred walk-on. He's not scholarship. To me, he'd be this guy, Will Straka, could be perfect on special teams. Like, give me like a Larry Izzo type ace out there. That's the kind of guy I think he could be. I'm not expecting him to be out there and be Luke Kuechly. I have an interview with him because I just talked to him. He really likes Luke Kuechly. But, I think there's going to be a big learning curve going from Division III to BC. But, hey, it's better than having Vaughn Pemberton at linebacker. Just going to say that. No offense to Vaughn. I'm sure he'd probably rather play running back too. So in our second segment, Bill O'Brien had his podcast and talked about the transfer portal and how he sees BC in that system. I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV in your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire's TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your pair controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Unlimited with EA Play, and you're ready to play. You can play Call of Duty Black Ops 6 or Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite show. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. And if you're a hardcore gamer, this is the way to go. It can be a game changer. You can play this anywhere. You don't have to have it wired like your Xbox. That's what I love about it. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd generation, Fire Stick TV 4K Max 1st and 2nd generation, and Fire TV Cube 3rd generation. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Thank you all who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every single day. And if you are an everydayer, if you listen to this 5 days a week, I want you to tell a friend. Tell a friend who can tell a friend who can tell a friend that Locked On Boston College is the place to go if you want to get informed Boston College news and notes and analysis that you won't find anywhere else. Now, Bill O'Brien has his podcast, and it's interesting. The podcast itself, if you're like me, I listen for the BC stuff. A lot of it is him talking about Boston sports and his time with the Patriots. A lot of it. And I get what they're going with because they're trying to attract the non-BC diehards with stories that can kind of filter into the BC world. For me, I don't care. I'm just gonna be frank. Like some of it's like hearing him talk about the Red Sox. I mean, it's his jam. He seems to have fun with John Meter Perel, so it's just not my style. The BC stuff though is very interesting, and right in the middle, it's usually a good 5 or 6 minutes. They talk BC stuff. This time they talked about the transfer portal. We talked about Nika Imaliva and that whole situation. How he wonder and Meter and I think it was Gene Levanchi, who was like a meteorologist that was on the pod. Interesting guest. He was asking them, are you worried about NIL and transfer portal? And he said, he talked a little bit about how no, this is a BC thing, and I feel comfortable having my guys here, and I feel like they know what the system is and what we're trying to do here, and they want to be here. Usual stock answer. He then talked about his, someone asked, I think one of the two other guys asked O'Brien, are you going to go heavy in the portal this year? And he said, no. He said, we're not a transfer portal heavy team. We're a high school development team. And that's something that I've heard him say. That's something I've heard Jeff Hafley say. And it's an interesting moniker to use, or a phrase to use, not moniker, because yes, you are a high school development team, but I don't see what he does as a high school development team. I see what Clemson does as a high school development team, because Clemson has had 4 transfers over the last 3 years. They just don't do anything like that. BC landed 11. That's, what roster? It's like 10% of your roster. So it's bigger. But I think what he said, what he's getting at is he never sees BC doing what Deion Sanders does, what West Virginia is in the midst of right now, what's going on with Cal, where you're having gigantic exoduses from your team, either because you chose to or because the coaching staff decided to move you on. And he's instead going to have, as he said, 5th years, the guys that are, maybe looking for a chance to play elsewhere. They're going to be the guys that transfer and not many else. And if you look at who's left in the last couple of years, especially under O'Brien, that's basically everybody. Other than guys that, like right now, Jacoby Robinson, he was never going to play. He was only a sophomore. Ryan Turner, I'm not sure what happened there. That's the one other one that's kind of confusing to me. But everyone else, it was just, go find yourself a chance to go play somewhere because you're not playing at BC. That didn't mean to come across as negative. I'm just saying, like, you're not going to get to play here. Might as well go find a place where you can play. And you can't hate the play or hate the game, right? So I thought this was interesting because part of me hopes that BC doesn't go down the road of Dabo Swinney. Clemson can afford to say, hey, we're not going to go into the transfer portal and we're not going to get all these guys because we're not doing this over in Clemson. He doesn't do that. That's what Bill O'Brien can't do, because Clemson has elite recruiting. They can mask not going for the portal because they're developing all these blue chippers, and Bryant Wesco and Cade Klubnik and Peter Woods and all these other great players. BC doesn't recruit to that level yet. They can develop guys and make them better, but can they do it to the level that, maybe that you find somebody out there that really fits what you need? I don't think they do. getting a Dylan Larnigan, getting a VJ Wilkins this year. Last year, getting a Kamari Morales. Sometimes you need a veteran or a guy that just is not on your roster. And I think that's what Bill O'Brien's getting at. I don't think he's saying he's not going to use the portal. I think he's saying he wants to make sure he doesn't turn into the next Dion, that he doesn't turn into the next Rich Rodriguez, because that's not what he wants to do. He doesn't want to kick guys out and go for the portal just to fix their roster. So, again, people keep at one of the things that keeps popping up for folks that want to know from me is will BC be heavy in this portal? And I don't think either in or out right now. I don't think they're going to be heavy because it does not appear to me that they're being preventative about the 105. It seems to me BC's waiting to hear what the situation's going to be. And hopefully, if they have to get to 105 roster spots, they're going to be able to do that without upending a whole bunch of players. But that's a tough spot to be in. But on top of all that, with all these numbers floating around, how do you even use the portal? You're going to bring guys in, but that just means someone on your roster already is going to have to get cut. If that gets to 105, it's just the reality of where that could go. We're waiting for this house settlement to come in. And I honestly, for me, I'm hoping that this does not happen this season. I really hope that whoever this judge is, and I forget her name, that she drags her feet enough that we don't hear about this for this year, and that in December they decide to install it. Just because there are so many, preferred walk-ons on this roster and guys that could end up, in a different spot because of it. And that seems incredibly unfair. I saw Arizona today. Arizona State, I think it was. They had 10 to 12 preferred walk-ons. They just cut. West Virginia's cut a whole bunch of players. If they don't have to do this yet, I can see where they're coming from. I would think that they want to be proactive, but if they really do believe that this judge is going to come up with something, because she keeps talking about it, about grandfathering in classes so that they don't have to do that, and it's a gradual process, that would be great. I just have heard over and over again that that's not going to happen. So O'Brien, he's going to do what he can in the portal because he does need to make this roster the best that they can. That's why I mentioned these two players. In our final segment, I want to talk a little bit lacrosse because we haven't really talked about lacrosse in a while, and they had another fun win on Thursday night. And I think this is going to show to you how good this team really is right now. This is Locked On Boston College. Your host, AJ Black here. Let's chat about lacrosse. But before I do that, I want to tell you about another podcast, Locked On ACC with Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono. They're a 5-day-a-week ACC podcast, and you can find them on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, lacrosse has had one loss this season, and it was a tough loss to UNC. Since then, they've had another. They won last week, and now they play on Thursday, and absolutely paced Syracuse. Now, Syracuse for a long time has been, the second best women's lacrosse team in the ACC. They were always the arch nemesis for BC, and all their games were always super tight. But BC has owned them lately. I think this is the 5th or 6th straight win against them. And BC won 17-2. This is the most points. I saw someone post that this is the fewest points that Syracuse has had in a game in 8 years. BC just dominated them. Shea Dolce had she had 12 saves in this game with an 857% save percentage. They were up 10-0 in the first half and just held on. And Syracuse didn't score until the third period. Rachel Clark, 9 points. We'll talk a little bit more about her in a moment. McKenna Davis had 5 assists, who now has 200 assists in her career at Boston College. Now, with this win, Boston College prepares for the ACC tournament, which they won last year. Their first round game is against Virginia. And I think if they win that, they get to play, they could play and end up playing Syracuse again. They're the 2 seed in this because they lost to freaking UNC. They have to win to get out. Now, that would be a great revenge game because UNC really did hold them. That was obviously a very tough loss. BC, I'm sure, would love to get some revenge and get that ACC title. So that, that's coming up next. The regular season's over. It went by fast. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule and I'm going, how is this season already over? But, this is the way they roll. They dominated this entire season. They only lost once. They are a blue chip team full of just unbelievable talent. They just get better and better every year. So next, I think we want to talk a little bit about each of the players because 5 BC women were named to the top 25 Tewarton watch list. That's the best player in lacrosse. They give it to the women and the men. And, we've seen Charlotte North win this. I have to say, it sounds like to me, Rachel Clark would be the one that's going to really be the one to win this year. She has 71 goals, leads the ACC and the country, and second in the nation with points with 89, and first in the ACC. So obviously, she had 9 points in this game. That's going to push her up more. She's done an incredible job. You have McKenna Davis with second in the ACC with 55 assists. You have Shea Dolce, your goalie, who has the best save percentage in the ACC, second in the nation, 536. And she's second in the ACC in the country with 7.3 goals allowed. You have Emma Lapinto with second on the team on goals with 56. Like, this team is just stacked. Like, this is what I love about watching. And then, of course, there's Shea Baker, defender. She's caused 29 turnovers and 24 ground balls. And second on the team with 72 draw controls. So you have 25 people named for this award. 5 of them are Boston College players. I really do think Rachel Clark has to be the presumptive favorite to win this, just based off of what I've seen and what, the way that she's kind of dominated the sport so far. So that's where that stands. Now, one last thing before we go. Baseball, they played Wake Forest last night as well. They lose in the 8th inning. I'm not trashing this team because they're not bad. They're not really that bad. Wake Forest is really good, and they held their own in this game. They just let up a run in the 8th inning, and that was enough to doom them. So they have 2 more against Wake, Friday and Saturday. They're off. They moved this up a little bit because of Easter. Hopefully they can pull off a win there because they really do need to get some wins to make sure that they're to solidify some sort of resume for the postseason. Now, on Monday, we'll be back. We're going to I said this on all the episodes next week. I tell you, I'm going on vacation next week. I know a lot of you who listen to me already know this, but my family's doing a break. So, but I am such a devoted podcast hoster for you guys that I recorded an entire week's worth of episodes for next week. Even though I'm not here, I talked draft, I talked spring football, transfer portal, all sorts of good stuff. So even though I'm going to be sitting in the Bahamas with a pina colada, you're still getting Locked On BC because I am not putting this down for you guys. I may not be here, but I'm going to put out great content for you. You can put that in the bank. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Thank you all for listening and for making us your first choice for Boston College news. I'll see you all again soon for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.